Welcome everybody. Sorry for the delay. We had some technical difficulties. Thank you, Audra Walters, for stepping in, swapping out laptops. We've got one with the right connection and the sharing. So welcome everybody. Thanks for coming out tonight. And this is a very important issue that we're going to talk about tonight. So you'll come away with a better understanding of the issue and get inspired to take action and work together as a community to halt destructive operations. Okay, this event is co-sponsored by Sustainable Seaside, Save Our Shores, Surfrider Foundation Monterey Chapter, and Citizens for Sustainable Marina, all of which are represented here tonight. I want to introduce Natalie. Natalie Delgado. Okay, you're going to be facilitating the Q&A. We are going to show. Well, okay, we don't have the video. So, all right, you're going to facilitate the Q&A. Okay, so we'll do that after a bit here. So we have three panelists tonight. We have Dr. Ed Thornton here, who's done some research and articles. We'll also introduce you. We have Mayor Delgado, Luis Delgado, the Marina Mayor, and Kevin Miller with Surfrider Foundation. We're very knowledgeable experts on this issue. So right now I'm going to introduce you to Rulof. I'll introduce our speakers and we'll go ahead with the panel.
Okay, hi, my name is Rulof Abrandes. I with Sustainable Seaside. Let me, that's okay. I think everybody can hear me.
You need a microphone.
Oh, okay, sorry. Where do we go? Okay. Just want to introduce three people and their background. The most important person, I don't want to say that. One of the most important people that's here is Ed Thornton. You might have lots of questions for him. He's been researching this issue about the sand mine, the problems with the sand mine, for years. I've read his studies for at least the last 15 years, but according to him, he's been studying this issue for much longer than that. So he's really one of our major experts. And he's a distinguished professor emeritus at the Naval Postgraduate School, Oceanography Department. He's an internationally recognized expert on coastal processes. His professional activities include American Society of Civil Engineers, American Geophysical Union, Sigma Psi, and the American Shore and Beach Preservation Society. He has authored and co-authored numerous articles. One of them is Long-Term Dune Erosion in Southern Monterey Bay, published 2006. If you want any copies of these articles, let me know. I have them on a Google format. You can read all the articles you want about sand mining. Okay, I have about 15 or 20, including newspaper articles, etc., and all the articles from Ed Thornton. Just let me know and I can include you. Coastal Erosion and Armoring in Southern Monterey Bay, another article in 2005. So without further ado, let me have Ed present you his slides.
Okay, I'm going to.
Okay, I'm going to put this on you. Let me put it here.
Okay, I'm going to talk about impacts of sand mining in southern Monterey Bay. And I'll talk about what's called the sand budget. It's nothing different than your checkbook. You measure how much, keep track of money coming in, how much you spend, and hopefully some storage in between the savings. Okay. So this is southern Monterey Bay, and we've had this severe dune erosion that's been going on for many, many years. And just don't touch it. That's fine. I can't keep up with it. I'd like to hold it to the side. Okay. So, anyway, we recognize that there's been severe erosion that's occurred. It's about 0.3 meters. I'm going to talk in meters tonight. In Monterey, about a little less than a meter in Sand City now. But in Marina, where the mayor lives, it's about 2 meters a year. And this mining, this erosion is associated with sand mining, and that's the topic tonight. Okay, am I in control now? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Now, I don't think you can really see this very well, but the shape of the bay is very important, and over the eons, it's come in an adjustment with the wave climate. And because of that, the wave, when they come or incident on the beach, they come in almost normally. And this is important because it means it's not a big angle, so that the sand doesn't move as fast as some other places. It does move, though. I'll talk about that. Okay. So there was a regional sediment management plan that was done in 2008. This was, the state of California requires this of all regions. Southern Monterey Bay was the first, and so we sort of set the standard. And that paper, and also some papers I've written, all concluded the primary cause of the erosion, these high erosion rates, which is some of the highest in California, is caused by sand mining. And Southern Monterey Bay has been the most intensively mined region in the United States. There were originally 6 mines, 3 in Sand City and 3 in Marina, and all of them but the CEMEX mine has been closed. There's 2 types of mines. There's the dragline mines, and this is nothing more than the old clothesline you pull in and put your clothes on the line, you pull it out and pull your clothes in and out. Well, there's a block off here, and there's a winch line that pulls, has a scraper that scrapes through the surf zone on the beach, scrapes the sand up into a pile where they process it. And this went on from 1927 to 1989, when the Corps of Engineers and the State Lands Commission, who have jurisdiction over processes below the mean high tide line. This is important. They control what's happening below the mean high tide line. They determined this kind of sand mining was causing erosion, severe erosion, so they closed all these mines down. Now that left one more mine, and this is the CEMEX mine. There's a lot of stuff in here we'll talk about. But here's, and many of you I'm sure have seen it, here's the dredge boat. And it hydraulically mines the sand, so it has a little pond that it makes and operates on. And then there's a line, a hydraulic line that takes the sand back to the plant, as you can see from Highway 1, and they process it. Now, this mine today is mining somewhere around 200,000 cubic meters, or that's more like 250,000 cubic yards. And the processes, the way it works, is that sand moves along the shoreline in response to the waves, and the waves also create currents. So this is the alongshore transport. The sand is stirred off the bottom, carried along the beach, and below the mean high tide line. So all this transport is below the mean high tide line. And sometimes when it comes to the CEMEX mine, if there's big waves and high tide, the swash carries the beach sand over the top, and it's captured in this pond. In this manner, the pond can fill up completely. I skipped that picture tonight. But this last year, completely filled up. Then they started all over again. Okay? Well, the State Lands Commission issued a statement that because the sand is moving along the shoreline below mean high tide line, sand is in the public trust, and when it comes to the pond, this capturing of the sand is no different than a drag line. It's operating in the same sense. It's capturing the sand, it's moving along beneath the high tide line, which they have jurisdiction over. And so they've decided that CEMEX is stealing sand from the public trust, and they require them to get a lease, the permit to operate, and to do that, they will be required to have an environmental impact report. This is what I've been waiting for a long time, because when there's an environmental impact report, you have to state how you're going to mitigate a problem if there's a problem, and there's definitely a problem, okay? So, if they want to mitigate the problem, they have to put the sand back.
When did State Lands Commission make that statement?
A month ago?
A month ago, okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. 3 weeks ago, very recently.
Approximately May 16th.
Okay, approximately. 1 month ago, okay. All right. So that's where we are today, and this is a 200,000 cubic meters is a lot of sand. Okay. So I'm going to talk about how I study processes and what I do. We set up video stations at Monterey, Sand City, Fort Ord, Marina, and these video stations take pictures of the ocean, and they do time lapse. And the time lapse, what you can see in a time lapse photo, this is 20 minutes of time lapse. And what you see are these white areas, dark areas, white areas, dark areas. And these are, what these are these are shoals, these are rip current channels. And I will tell you that Southern Monterey Bay is the best example of rip currents in the whole world. The best, I've never found any better. And it also makes it dangerous. And the reason for the rip channels is because the waves are coming in normally to the shore. The wave crests are parallel to the shoreline, which I mentioned before. Okay, well, what we did for 3 years was to every day track the movement of these channels, because they propagate, because there's sand transport moving along. And this told us the direction and the amount of sand that was being transported. So that's an important thing to know and understanding. Okay, the other thing that you hear about are called littoral cells. Littoral cells are boundaries along the shoreline where you can identify all the processes, the in and outs, and you hope to find places where there's nulls, nothing happening. So at Point Pinos, no sand gets around the point. Up here in Moss Landing, all the sand from the north goes down the canyon. So this is a big littoral cell from Point Pinos to Moss Landing. But there's also some subcells, and I'm going to focus, there's a southern, northern, we're going to focus on the central subcell, which goes from Sand City up to the Salinas River. It's about 15 kilometers, 10 miles. And this is what we're going to focus on. And from the video, studying the video images, we know that the transport at Sand City is to the north, and that's because of the orientation of the shoreline. It's almost east-west. Waves come in here, they're going to drive the sand that way. In this region, they're more like normal, and so the transport goes both north and south, primarily to the north in the winter and to the south in the summer, the rest of the year. That's important. And then up here, it all goes mostly to the north. And so this is the Salinas River. Sand comes out of here. Some of it goes north down the canyon. Some comes down into this central subcell. So we want to keep track of all this. Okay, so there's our budget. The inputs are the dune and beach, the river, and some transport from the south. And the losses, the only one we're going to identify is the sand mining. Now, we're going to do a particular kind of budget. We're only going to keep track of beach sand. Okay, so if you go down to the beach by the Marina beach and feel the sand, it's coarse. It's a coarse sand. And the reason we are only interested in beach sand is because that's the only kind of sand the mine captures. Okay, the sand's moving along, and when it goes over the top of the berm to go into the pond, it's all beach sand. So therefore, we only have to keep track of beach sand. And this makes it a lot easier. We don't have to worry about wind. We don't have to worry about refined sand going offshore. Makes it a lot easier. Okay, so 3 time periods. We're going to focus 1910, 1945, 1989, 2011. 2011 because that's the last measurements that I made. Thought about going out and doing some more, but we'll see why I'm reticent to do that. Okay, so let's talk about the input by dune bluff erosion. Okay, what happens is mining causes the beach to narrow because you're taking sand out of the system. This makes the dunes more vulnerable. And so, because the beach narrows, the waves can get to attack the bottom of the dune falls onto the beach, but that's good because it nourishes the beach and gives sand to the beach. So here you see this amazing picture that Doug Smith captured, showing a slumping sand, and you can see the splash happening in real time. But this is how the processes work, and the dunes lose about 160,000 cubic meters a year. It's a big number, but only 25% of that sand of the dune is compatible with the beach sand because the dune sand has much finer composition. So that means only 25% of this 160,000 is going to nourish the beach. The finer sand is going to be winnowed offshore and lost to the offshore. Okay, so how we... This got me a little bit. Just push the button there. You do it manually. Okay, so what we want to keep track of is this dune top edge, because that's a measure of permanent erosion. There's no way to grow this dune today, and so what happens is at coincident high tide and storm waves, the narrowing of the beach, it's an undercut, it falls into the ocean. So what we want to do is keep track of this to make measurements. Just push the button. I'll let you do it. We do it in 3 different ways: stereophotogrammetry, LiDAR, and walking. This is stereophotogrammetry, and so we have photos going back to 1940. So some of the earlier measurements were made in this manner, and you can keep track of what we're keeping track of is the dune, and you can see a vegetation line. And when we do this, we average over a long stretch of the beach, normally about 1 kilometer, and then average that, and that gives a measure, a point on the graph, which I'm going to show you next. This is LiDAR. This is flying plane looking down with a rotating laser beam, and it gives you this magnificent, very rich textured picture. But what you see here, I'm going to make a point, is the dune edge is going up and down. Okay, next. Okay, this is my grandson walking the dune edge. I've done it several times. Last time I got my grandson to do it. It's much easier. So what this is a GPS. It's a survey grade GPS. And in post-processing, you can get your position within about 5 centimeters in all directions. Wow. So these are accurate measurements. And here's what we have. Then we take that data, and each one of these data points is a survey of the dune top. So here's recession in meters versus years. And so we started some arbitrary measurement, call that 0. And then we plot, as years go by, we plot how far back the dune has moved back recessed. And so what you see here between 1940 and about 1989, the dune is recessed almost 90 meters. You divide 90 meters by 50 years and you get essentially 1.8, 1.9 meters per year. And that gives you, so the recession versus time, you measure the slope, gives you a rate. And what we see at Sand City, and what is this line right here? This is when all the dragline mines closed, okay? So there were 6 mines up to here. There's only 1 mine after that. So what you see is a high erosion rate at Sand City. All the mines in Sand City closed, and the response was the erosion rate significantly decreased. On the other hand, at Marina, we had a low recession rate. I don't know why it was so low, but it was low. And then after 1989, presumably in response to the need for sand and the other mines are closed, the CEMEX operation ramped up their production, and so that their rate, what you see is a big rate increase in recession at Marina after that date, which is probably because there's mining more sand and more erosion is occurring. But so you see this geographical response to changing in mining. Okay, I almost wasn't going to show you this, but okay, here's recession rate. Here's those values we get off those slopes. Okay, well, let me start up here. This is the dune heights. So this is the dune height, and you can see from Monterey to the Salinas River, and we're interested in these, where that vertical bars are, from Sand City to the Salinas River. And you can see the dunes. These are some of the best dunes in all of California. They get up to 40 meters at about 135 feet, more than 135 feet. You also see the height of the beach. Okay. It's the back toe of the beach. Okay, so, and down here is recession rate versus distance. And again, Sand City to the Salinas River. And this curve is 1940 to 1989, the dotted line. And the negative increasing values, more recession. More recession is negative, okay. So, Sand City, lots of erosion. And then it's not so much a Marina. And Marina is just the opposite. From 1989 to 2011. Not so much in Sand City, that's what we said, a big increase in Marina. And these are the locations of the mines. These are the 3 drag lines, 2 drag lines plus CEMEX. Okay, so you can see the response of the erosion to the mining. Okay, so here's our sediment budget up to now. The inputs are the dune, which falls on the beach. And so and you only get 25% of the dune sand because that's all that's compatible with the beach. So the combined beach and dune is that number, 140,000 cubic meters. And so this is the sand that's available to move along the shore to be captured by the mine. Okay, the next number is the river. The river is, here's the Salinas River. It discharges about 1 million cubic meters of sediments, but only a small fraction of that is sand, beach sand size. In fact, it's only 100 plus 30,000 cubic meters. And some of it goes north, some of it goes south. And so today there's about 30,000 cubic meters that goes south into the littoral cell we're interested in. Now, one of the things that has occurred is that there are 3 dams built. This should be 55. 3 dams that were built, and this diminished the supply of sand to the beaches and to the ocean. So today, this is the number that's available. It used to be more than that. Okay, so here's the sediment budget. We're all done. The sediment budget. Okay, so this is just for beach. And this is, we have 3,000 cubic meters coming in from the south across this boundary. The blue lines are the beach and dune sand of about 170,000 combined. We have 30,000 of the river sand coming in, and we have 200,000 sand mining going out. And if it was a perfect balance, you'd have a residual down here of 0. Okay, well, the residual is not 0, but it's pretty close to 0. Okay, that means that if it was 0, it'd mean that incoming, both sides, into the cell, the contribution by the beach and dune is all being sucked up by this mine. So one of the conclusions I have is that most of the erosion rate appears to be caused by this mine. Now, there is a big uncertainty, and the big uncertainty has to do with the fact that the amount of sand mine is proprietary. They won't tell you how much it is. So that how much is mined is based on a bunch of things I had to determine. Okay. Yeah. All right, so this is my argument to the Coastal Commission coming up in July 13th. Been working on this talk. This is a sediment budget from 1910 to 1945. The U.S. Geological Survey actually has shoreline measurements, surveys of the shoreline going back to 1884. So I picked off 1910 to 1945, and this is the recession or accretion rate. Okay, and this is our cell we're looking at, San City to Salinas. And at that time, from 1910 to 1945, there was more sand available coming in because the dams hadn't been built. But still, there was only this small amount coming from the south. And the mines started operating in San City in 1927. So by 1945, they were mining 100,000 cubic meters already. But over this time we're interested in, it averaged about 30. So for this sand budget, you add up these numbers and you get a net, this is the residual, is 23,000 cubic meters. It's being stored in growing beaches. This is all positive. The beaches grew enormously when the river, and now I should point out, in 1910, the Salinas River changed course from discharging into Elkhorn Slough and all the sand going down the canyon to its location today. So this became a contribution, and you saw that you can see this enormous rate growth of the beaches around San City, around the Salinas River, of up to 6 meters a year. That's big. So what you see in the mean, the accretion rate is almost a meter a year. And there's an uncertainty in the measurements, but it's still positive in any way you look at it. What this says is that the natural state of the beach without mining, or some small amount of mining even, the beaches are growing. They're not eroding naturally. The natural state of the beaches are to grow, and that's what I would expect in the future if we were to stop sand mining. The sand budget for sand material, just beach sand, the river has been decreased considerably. You still have the transport from the south. This is about a 50% decrease in the amount of sand available, the net. The mean accretions would be about a half a meter per year expected, based on history. And so expected, if the mine were to close, my expectation in the mean, the beaches will grow, based on history. Okay, so I've redrawn the expected future. Here's right now the recession. If you take that difference, this is supposed to be gray, it's never gray. You can take this area integrated along shore, and that says the annual amount of sand lost over in this literal cell is 3 acres a year. 6 acres. I was thinking 3 because that's how much Marina loses. All by itself is 3 because they're very near the mine. This is where Marina is, but it's 6 acres for the entire cell. If you look at the summary of impacts, then the shoreline is naturally accreting without mining. Because of mining, there's a very high erosion rate. The annual loss of sand is 290,000 cubic meters, which you'll note is more than is being mined because the mines cause the dunes to erode, and a big portion of that goes offshore and is lost because of the mining operation. The annual loss of land is greater than 6 acres. Then if you integrate over the years, since the mine started in 1965, it's more than 140 acres of pristine shoreline land has been lost. And I think this is the nuisance that's being created in Marina that they're complaining about. I'm not sure, but Bruce is going to tell us that. Also, if you look at how much sand has been lost, it's more than 14 million cubic meters. If you want yards, you multiply by 1.3. So this is enormous numbers. And it's obvious to me, in conclusion, that the CEMEX mine is the cause of erosion. Okay, thank you.
We have a question and answer period, but if we, I'd like to hold off the questions until we hear first from Bruce. We have Bruce Delgado, and he'll give us a little bit of background of the city of Marina and their work with the sand mine and what they've been doing. And then after that, I'd like to have a few words from Kevin over here, the Surfrider, and what his organization has been doing. Okay. Bruce,
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I don't see anyone, but raise your hand if you're from CEMEX.
No.
Today, a coworker put a sign in my cubicle at work, and he said, "Bruce, did you notice what I put in your cubicle? I added something." My cubicle's kind of messy, so it takes a while for me to notice. So I hadn't noticed, and so he wanted me to see that. So I went in, I looked around, I didn't see it. He says, "No, you gotta look behind the computer." I look behind the computer, and there's this CEMEX, do not trespass, civil code, penal code, something. Where'd you get that? He said, "Well, one of our coworkers had it, and he threw it in the trash." And I asked him, "Can I take that?" He said, "Sure, I just threw it in the trash, you can have it." So it's kind of weird that that was this morning that someone put a CEMEX sign in my cubicle. So I was gonna bring it tonight, but I thought, no, that's not professional. So I wanted to start, just get to the punchline. The status, Ed referred to the fact that the State Lands Commission is requiring a permit. You don't have a permit, you need to have a permit. To get a permit, you have to file environmental impact report. And so that's one angle, and I was talking to Tim Barrett earlier. Thank you, Tim, for supporting this at the Monterey City Council level. And the Coastal Commission, I think their main argument is about a vested right, which that's a very complicated legal argument, and I think that's a big lift, and that's what the Coastal Commission is angling at mostly. And the city of Marina is angling at the public nuisance that Ed mentioned toward the end of his talk. And the public nuisance argument was supported by 3,000 pages of material information at the Marina City Council level on June 6th, just recent. And we gave all of that information ahead of time to CEMEX. And they had 11 days prior to our meeting, and they gave us about 4,000 pages of sort of competing information. And then at the meeting, they gave us 45 pages, hot off the press. And I think that they expressed they were hoping that we would delay taking any action until we had enough time to review all of their material, and so that they would have more time to review all the material that was sent them. However, all of the material that was sent them was a compilation of 2006 and earlier up to 2017. And we asked them, is it true that you have 1,000 lawyers? And they said, no. Is it true you have thousands of lawyers? And they said, no, that's not true. We said, well, how many lawyers about? We have about 1,000. And so we tried to go through methodically all these studies that had come out for many years and asked them, according to USGS study of 2006, do you think you and your staff, your legal folks, have had a chance to see this 2006 article? I can't say. I'm not part of the legal staff. Are they here tonight? No, they're not here tonight. So we went through a lot of these studies that were part of our thousands of pages that we had sent them. And they wanted 60 more days to review this. And so we tried to point out that they have basically been sort of in denial, kind of like the tobacco industry or you name it industry. If they delay, they make more profit, right, before they have to pay the piper. Delay, delay, delay. And it's unfortunate because their behaviors were typical of a big corporation where they would say no to invitations to join panels like this that were presenting information, such as Ed's and other researchers, such as Gary Briggs. They would be invited to present their information so that it was a well-rounded discussion and they weren't being picked on without being invited. I mean, this is an information sharing opportunity. Please come to the panel. Your representatives are welcome to present information, and they would not show up. And that was because they didn't want, I think, to interact, right? And so now, fast forward many years of being staunchly sort of in denial and not available and not participatory with the public. So you get to the end game and they're saying, well, all this science is bad, but we haven't used our time to have any science done or review the science that has been done in a peer-reviewed fashion to properly, counter that. We're just going to say that after doing no work, that's bad science. And unfortunately, there are some elected officials that are repeating that line. It's peer-reviewed science, but it's bad science, quote unquote, without any reference to which are you referring and what about it is bad. So it's kind of a lazy opposition, if you will. And the sad part is that there are about 20 jobs at CEMEX that I think are in the position of being used as sort of political shields. You can't shut this down because these families will lose out. And it's unfortunate because when you look at the history of what corporations such as CEMEX have done to support the longevity of their workers' jobs, in this case has been do not participate in the community, do not pay local sales taxes, do not engage in any way, and deny, keep taking and harming. And now when you're being, at the end, now you're saying, what about these jobs? And it's something we need to keep in mind. Regardless of what I just said, we do want to do what we can to respect these workers and their families. And we want CEMEX, from this point forward, to do what they can. They still have time and money to do some review that's legitimate, to point out why they think it's bad science. And they still have time to plan for where these employees might go should their plant get closed. And maybe there's a year or two of transition after closure where their same heavy equipment operators can help to restore 104 acres. That's a lot of land, and it will take a while. But they're not yet talking about that because they're still in the mode of hope that they can continue mining as much as they are. And interestingly, I think the public nuisance meeting that happened at City of Marina prompted them to give us some information, Ed, about their extraction volumes. And I don't know, Ed, if you've seen that information. Where are you, Ed?
I'm right here.
They were wrong numbers.
But anyway, their
They're
numbers,
numbers.
have you seen those numbers before?
No, I saw them, well,
Okay, so for the first time, they presented some numbers
yes.
that Ed has seen and said they're wrong, and
Well,
Ed has
no,
pointed,
No, they are correct numbers, but they were sales numbers and not mining amounts.
got it. So it's kind of apples and oranges. So Ed has been repeating this approximate 200,000 cubic meters per year, being taken, something like that. And they said, oh, no, that's all false. We've gone down to as low as 100, we've gone up to as much as 500,000 in the 80s, and so Ed's numbers are all wrong, but they don't tell us about those 500, because the 500 includes sales, perhaps, with that they've stored some sand and now they're selling it, and I think it might also include actual dune mining on top of the beach mining, because there have been some mines in that area, Ed, is that correct, that have taken the dune sand, not just from the beach, but from the hind dunes and the mid dunes.
Well, it's in the past, but not
Right,
now.
and these are past numbers,
Yeah,
so,
but the numbers they provided really were sales numbers, and they reflected the recession.
right, so they did not present them as sales numbers, they presented them as mining numbers. So what we're mining now is much less than our 500,000 plus peak, and now you're saying that the erosion is accelerating, or has been accelerating, but that doesn't make sense if you listen to our numbers, is what they were saying. So what you can do is communicate with your elected representatives, because most of the coastal cities' elected representatives are not doing much in this case, and in some ways they're opposing any progress on getting to the truth of CEMEX and getting them to a place where they're no longer harming our shoreline. And the reasons that I've heard 3 mayors give, one said it's peer-reviewed science, but it's bad science. Another mayor said, I do not want to support the cease and desist because Marina was opposed to a road on Fort Ord, unnamed, the Monterey Downs project, and a water project that would bring a million gallons a day or something like that. But whatever those 3 exact specifics were, it wasn't about CEMEX or community good. It was, I cannot support this because Marina, which the fact is we've never taken an official position on any of those items, unless they're talking about the recent EIR on the desal, because we sent extensive comments pointing out concerns that we have about the groundwater impacts that the desal may well have on our source water. I mean, for just a distraction here, imagine if Marina told the Monterey PG area, for our water's sake, we need to build a desal in your beach, but you're not going to get any of that. It's for us. We're going to build a pipe that's going to come back to Marina so we can take that water underneath your city because we really need it because we have a problem and we need to fix our problem. And it's not going to affect your groundwater, okay? What would PG and Monterey say? So Marina is saying what you logically would think. It's like there's a lot of data here, and our water district says that our water would be in harm's way. So of course we're expressing those concerns. So maybe that's what he meant about the opposition to a water project. But he didn't name the project, so I don't know that. But my point was that it wasn't science. It wasn't the community good. It was to get back at a city who didn't do something he wanted us to do on other projects. And then the last mayor who spoke said, well, it says here, the information provided at Thornton, that 66% of the erosion is coming from the Salinas River no longer giving as much sediment as it used to. And I pointed out, actually, Ed brought that information to this document to confirm that it's the 66% reduction in Salinas River, which is not considered as part of this residual conclusion that we're losing 200,000 approximate tons, cubic meters, or 200,000 tons every year, apart from the Salinas River reduction. And his response was, well, who can really say? So it's bad science, but we'll use some of this other information that really isn't very strong to the point. And then lastly, a CEMEX representative went up and said, I know a lot of you from high school. I know a lot of Carmel restaurant owners. We talk about this all the time. Please don't support sending a letter to the Coastal Commission. So, it's bad science, but if you knew me in high school, that's probably more important than good science. And it's those kinds of arguments that I suppose you'll be facing if you advocate to your representatives what you want them to do on the CEMEX issue. Those of you in PG, I hope that you learn from Ed the harm being done to PG, because PG is mostly more of a rocky substrate, not like Sand City or Marina, which is a sandy substrate. So I am unsure what the direct impacts to PG are, but each mayor, each city council, and your county representative on the board of supervisors needs to hear why they need to support this cease and desist. And if you live in PG or Carmel, Ed, I hope, can give you more reasons, because most elected officials want to know, how's it affect my constituency. So I can think of some indirect ways that PG would be hurt by Monterey beaches and north being lost, but I'm not as strong on that as Ed might be on the direct impacts. The reason that we in Marina declared it a public nuisance was because of the real estate being lost. Through Ed's information, it's something between 70 and about 70 to 80 acres of marina real estate that has been lost. So of course that's a harm to our city, because that's within our city limits. We've lost that land. 75 football fields are no longer in Marina, that area. And secondly, if you walk the beaches of Marina, there are times of the year you cannot cross where CEMEX is, because it's like a strong river coming into that pit. So it would be dangerous to cross it. And so our local coastal program states that we have to protect our access to our beaches. And the Coastal Commission, that's going to be, I'm sure, a piece of their argument, that if you prevent access to beaches, that's no fair, right? And then thirdly, there's infrastructure that formerly was buried that is now being exposed. Different kinds of outfall pipes and things like that. And nobody wants that on your beach. And so it's an aesthetic impact to your beach experience that you deserve to have an experience that's not degraded from discretionary activities. But CEMEX's big argument that they spent most of the time in those many pages that they sent to our city council was, we have a vested interest, we have a vested right, and they have a lot of material to back up that they have a vested right. And like I said earlier, the Coastal Commission is dealing with that. But in our case, it's sort of fortunate that a public nuisance trumps a vested right. You don't have a vested right to harm people and harm their way of life. You have a vested right to mine or do what you do, but you don't have a vested right to harm others. And so if it can be proven that you are harming others, well, that would trump your vested right. But they didn't speak to that at all. And you would think that with their legal capacity, they would respond to what we were doing. So it was kind of incongruent that they were coming here and we were not on the same wavelength. So I just hope that you do continue learning and communicate with your local leaders, because the Coastal Commission, the State Lands Commission, and CEMEX are vulnerable or cognizant of public pressure. And if the community wants something, even CEMEX, they were competing contractually to help build the wall. But citizens in Mexico were very upset about that, and so CEMEX pulled out of that process because of the public pressure. So they're not too big to be cognizant of what we do as a community. My time is up, I'll just say thank you for being a community on this and other issues, and it's only because of the community public support, not people like me, but the public, Kevin and Ed and others who have coalesced, and they're represented in your faces in this room. It's only because of you that the Coastal Commission has gotten to this point, and there's people like you that got the State Lands Commission very recently to be involved. And the City Council of Marina has been very much influenced. So it's the community coming together that's got us to this point. So I hope that we can continue together.
If we can hold the questions, and let's just hear from Surfrider. Kevin Miller wants to give a little bit of a talk on what Surfrider has been doing over the last number of years.
been a long road, and it's a tough act to follow. So Surfrider Foundation is a international nonprofit, but it's run by chapters that are all run by volunteers. So Monterey Chapter has been working on this for about 3.5 years now. We have been inviting CEMEX to public meetings, to private meetings, and they never really returned our phone calls. And so really what I'm here today is to ask you for two things. Those of you who are in the city of Seaside, we would love the city of Seaside to write a letter to State Lands Commission and the Coastal Commission, along with their sister cities of Marina, of Sand City, of Monterey, saying this sand mine is harming our beaches, is harming our economies, and we would like you to do something about it. So that meeting is on July 6th, I believe. So if you're a resident of Seaside, especially, or anyone here, please show up to that meeting. Second, the Coastal Commission is coming to town, and they'll be at Cal State Monterey Bay on July 13th. We don't know what they're going to say necessarily. We will probably know a little bit of what they're about to present to us at when the agenda is released in late June. They could take several tacks. They could say, we've decided to hold to the letter that we wrote to CEMEX to begin with and issue an order of cease and desist. They could say we've made an agreement with CEMEX and that agreement is X, Y, and Z, and we have to decide whether or not we are happy with that agreement or not. Or they could they could say we don't have anything. So we're not quite sure what that's going to be, but regardless, we would love for all of you to be there to let the Coastal Commission either say thank you, or we're not very happy with what you presented with us. And so unfortunately I can't tell you what that message is right now, but we do have sign-up sheets at the entrance of the meeting. If you missed that, please sign up and we will let you know at the end of June what's going to happen. And you'll probably be able to sport one of these fancy shirts. They're very fashionable. Yes, exactly. So that's my message to you all. I think Ed and Bruce have covered all the important facts of this case. Thank you.
We'll now open it up to questions, and
Can we have the panelists at the table?
yeah, maybe that's a great idea. And also I want to let you know, before we get started, these shirts, if you plan to wear them to the Seaside meeting on July 6th, or you plan to come to the Coastal Commission, please pick one up. They're free, okay? So please take one with you.
Do you have a preference for getting questions for the video?
For me,
Do you have a preference for getting the questions on the video?
I'd like to have someone with the microphone
Repeat them?
oh yeah, that would work.
All right. I'm Natalie, and I'm the Chair of Citizens for Sustainable Marina, and I get the fun job of leading you through this. So we have 30 minutes, and I'm going to set a timer for in the middle of a question. When it goes off, we'll wrap
Hey,
up.
I don't hear you.
You don't?
No.
How about now?
Okay,
Now?
just a minute. Say something.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
I still don't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
I hear something.
You hear something but not me? Somehow.
The
This one's not working.
Jerry Dinzer.
There you go. Share and share alike.
All right,
All right, how's that?
I hear you. Perfect.
Perfect. All right, so I'm going to set a timer for 30 minutes. If it goes off in the middle of the question, we'll wrap that
30
question up, and then we'll have to call it quits.
So we only get 30 minutes for each answer?
You can get kicked out.
Or 3 minutes maybe, or?
Please formulate questions that are concise questions so we can move around and answer as many questions as we can. Please save your comments for letters to the editor. We all have a lot of emotions and thoughts on this issue, and those are better written out and not for Q&A. Okay? All right, so let's get this started. Yes?
Do you think it's a better strategy for us to go to the Coastal Commission meeting and present the issue there, or to work through the cities and towns and their impact on the Coastal Commission?
All right, so the question is, for citizens, is it better that they go to the Coastal Commission or work within their cities to get information out?
Yes.
Oh, to get a change.
Yes.
If you do one, then you're gonna be primed, to repeat the other. But if you had to do one, I think the Coastal Commission is probably more important. The cities are just to show the Coastal Commission there's public support for whatever it is you want. But at the Coastal Commission, that's where the most important decision will be made.
I met a lady recently at a park event who mentioned to me that a lot of sand that's being put on beaches in Hawaii is actually, according to a spokesman there in Hawaii, was coming from Monterey. Any truth to that?
So the question is the sand being mined here on the Central Coast going to Hawaii?
I think it's an urban myth. I'm not sure. I've heard this for a long time. I heard this like in 1980 when I went there first, so I have no idea. That's a long ways to carry.
Yes, I think so.
G's across the room.
All right, another question?
Yes, earlier I was talking with Mayor Delgado, and he suggested that I write a letter to the Coastal Commission stating how I feel about this. And in his inimitable fashion, he listed off all these wonderful points, and they've come and gone. So what I'm wondering is if you could make that list and send it to those of us who have signed up our email, and I will write a letter. But you have the facts so much better at your fingertips. Or you can say them right now, and I'll try to write them down.
So there's a request that the Mayor Delgado provide a list of points for people to be able to write questions.
Letters.
I'm sorry, letters, thank you.
I'll turn it over to Kevin, because I assume that they have organized some talking points.
Right, so we passed out there's a flyer that was at the entrance, monterey.surfrider.org/sand, and there is links to recent news articles, resources, quick facts from our headquarters. So that's all on our website, so monterey.surfrider.org.
I don't know.
That
Is
one,
this one?
yes. No,
This.
not that one. I'll make sure, that one, with the big font, right on the bottom. Let's do something.
Hey, I
Yeah,
don't
so
know what it
where are the
says, but
talking points?
They're right on that page, on monterey.surfrider.org/sand.
Go to the website.
No, you go to the website.
Yeah,
On the website.
Yes.
And my specific suggestion was that whatever you write, that you tell them, please include this in your agenda packet for your July meeting, so that the coastal commissioners will see that public support in writing before they sit on the dais at the
Please
meeting,
include my letter.
in your agenda packet.
I mean, I think we can all do that. It's, more than I should do it. I think we should all do it if we care about this.
I think Lynn had her hand up. And
I
then
was
we'll go to
wondering,
the
does CEMEX have other sand mining places, factories in Mexico and so on right now?
So the question is, does CEMEX have other facilities in Mexico or other locations?
So the real question is, is there something unique about this mine? The advantage of the mine is they advertise it's low dust, and the reason it's low dust is it comes out of the ocean. It's only beach-sized sand, so it's the larger sand, but there's nothing unique about it. There's something like 2,500 mines in the United States, and I've been out in California. So there's lots of sand around. Sand is after air and water, the third most sought after resource is sand in the world. That might have been in the movie.
There's been 12 years of litigation where CEMEX is trying to open a mining plant in the Bakersfield area. They haven't been able to yet. And there are many CEMEX-owned sand mining plants around the country. And there's one north of Santa Cruz called the CEMEX concrete plant that recently closed, recently meaning since around 1990, something like that. And they had hundreds, like approximately 600 employees at their peak. And then in the 80s, it went pared down to 300, and it's been closed for many years. And my point there is that finding a home for 600 employees that no longer work there and absorbing them through lateral transfers and retirement, they were able to do it. And there are some who work at this Marina plant that used to work at the Santa Cruz CEMEX plant. So if those approximate 20 jobs have to be found in future, that's a formula, that's something that's important, and I hope that it can be done.
Just to point out that CEMEX is the largest construction company in the world. So it's a big, big corporation.
Yeah, point of clarification on the Davenport cement plant, that the problem there was the dust. They made cement there. It was grinding the cement and they made it dust, and that was a big environmental problem. But the question is, why can't the city of Marina just require CEMEX say you have to have a permit, period?
So the question is, why can't City of Marina require a permit?
We could go down that path, but it's a longer path, more convoluted, more costly. The public nuisance path, we thought, was our best option at this time, considering the complexity and the finances, etc., and the chance of success.
Yes.
A lot of the coastline that's in question here is part of the state beach. Does the state parks have a position on this, and will they be joining?
Hey, the question is, given that a lot of this area is on the state parks land, do they have some say in this? Is that your question?
Are they joining us?
Are they joining in on this?
And how about the marine sanctuary as well?
So Marine Sanctuary is a bit easier because NOAA was involved in one of the reports on the effects of erosion. Carol might know more about the sanctuary's official position, but I'm not quite sure on that. As far as state parks, so state parks in their EIR for, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the new fabulous campsite that they want to put in next to the bunkers over there off Highway 1. I'm really excited about it. In the EIR for that project, they did highlight the threat of coastal erosion as a big problem. Those bunkers are actually going to be developed into offices and a museum, and the back of one of those bunkers is already exposed. So they have outlined that in their EIR. We've approached them. My feeling, and this gets to a broader theme of this fight, which is State Lands Commission, Coastal Commission, City and Marina are really stretching their necks out a little bit on this, right? They're taking a little bit of a risk, and I think state parks right now, because of where they are with planning and a bunch of other changes in leadership in the local area, haven't really been able to make that stretch their necks out that far, but they're very aware of the impact of this on their properties.
Other questions?
Did somebody confirm for me, is this plant that's in Marina the only one that is on the west coast at this time?
So the question,
Along the Pacific coast?
is this question, the question is this particular plant in Marina the only one along the west coast?
It's the only shoreline mine
Yeah.
in the United States.
Yeah.
In the United States.
The whole
United
United States.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
it's
others
only-
are all inland.
Yeah.
I think that's significant for some reason.
Could you define the risk that you just talked about that the State Lands Commission and the Coastal Commission feel is a risk? I didn't quite understand that.
So Jerry's asking Kevin if he can define the risk by the state parks or by the other
State Lands
agencies.
or the Coastal Commission?
Well, the risk is that they could be sued for a long period of time, as we've seen recently, most recently with the eco resort in Seaside.
And there's a PR risk because these bodies these government bodies are political in nature. And so they could get a black eye, and CEMEX is a big company. So you get litigation for a long time, and you can also have political, there could be political ramifications for your boards. So it could be politically dicey. For a little town like Marina, a big corporation like CEMEX, you can see what could happen.
Thank you.
Yeah, I might say that State Lands was much more nimble in terms of acting. We went up to their commission, and Gavin Newsom, who is a politician, very sensitive to what's going on. They only have a 3-member board, and after we gave our presentation, they went into the back room, they came out and essentially said, we think we can do something for you. And the Coastal Commission, on the other hand, is 12 commissioners, and they're from all over the state, and they're much more difficult to get to act. But I cannot, I mean, my commendation for Marina is overwhelming, I have to tell you.
Yes.
I'm wondering if there's any advantage to us, in addition to writing the Coastal Commission, to write to state parks and ask them to get on board and be able to say to the city council, our city council in Seaside, that we've written these letters and we're trying to get other people on board.
All right, so Kay would like to know if writing letters to the Coastal Commission would it also be beneficial to write to the state parks?
Once you write that first letter, it's easier, the second one, to change who it's going to. And I think between now and July 13th, there should be some focus on submitting to that process. If you take your time and you submit to a city, for that city to act, like Ed has seen, that takes some time, especially if a city is recalcitrant and really doesn't want to make progress. So I'd say send it to the highest priority, and then if you have some time left, just tweak it a bit and send it to who you mentioned, your local jurisdiction.
Yes.
I don't think I want them to get a permit, pay taxes, and continue to mine. I mean, that's, they were asked to do that, or told to do that. I mean, if they could continue to mine, I mean, I just assume to shut them down, then they just sort of split the baby in half and keep mining.
Comments are for another time.
Oh, that was a question mark, yeah.
Yes.
This is a question for Ed. CEMEX has their own scientist, I forget his name, but they're quoting somebody else that disagrees with you. There was an article about this in the Coast Weekly recently, and having only read that article and what his position is, it seems to me that the two of you don't really disagree. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, the first...
The question is regarding scientists from CEMEX that...
Well, let me...
Okay.
All right. This has to do with, CEMEX did hire a scientist, he's a geologist from the East Coast, Steve Leatherman, whom I know, and he made comments, and he started out by saying he strongly, I sort of paraphrasing, strongly thought I was absolutely wrong, because there's no beach erosion, the beaches just move landward. I don't disagree.
Then quit saying that they erode. They're not eroded.
But I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. But they do move landward.
Right, that's the way to put it.
Gary asked, or was concerned that if we go the permit and pay tax route, that the mining would continue. And we heard Ed say that if they were to go for a permit, they would have to do an EIR and mitigate the damage. And that's what we want, is the damage to go away, right? So what I think Gavin Newsom said, and I'm paraphrasing, you need to get a permit, and these aren't the old days. We don't give permits for this kind of stuff. But you need to get one or stop mining.
Okay.
So Dr. Leatherman was the consultant who produced the 45 pages hot off the press at the Marina City Council meeting. The first 9 pages were text relating to the issue. The next 39 pages or whatever were lists of panels that he has been on, articles that he has written. And the 9 pages we were able to digest during the meeting, and the front page summary said, there is no coastal erosion. In fact, the beaches are just as wide as they ever have been. They've just moved, I'm sorry, the dunes are just as wide as they've been. They've just moved east.
I will make a comment about the state lands decision, which is more or less the holy grail of coastal engineering. And what they state, and it's called the sand rights, is that sand moves along the shore. And it's moving all the time. Sand moves along, it goes by, but there's sand to replace it. And it's when you interrupt that flow of sand that causes your neighbor to have an erosion problem. And that's the basic argument that the State Lands Commission made. And it's an argument that coastal engineers have been trying for years to get codified in law. And so this decision could really be precedent-setting, certainly for the state of California. So, again, I'm really excited about this. And I wouldn't mind going to be litigated because then it'd be codified. But anyway, that just an aside.
Yes.
How much is CEMEX paying for the sand they're removing and selling?
So the question is, how much is CEMEX paying for the sand they're removing?
And also, can I do that?
Well, you heard Gavin Newsom said they don't give permits for that anymore.
Darn it.
So you can't do it. And the city of Marina receives 0. The county of Monterey, I understand, receives about $205,000 a year. I don't know if that's property tax, sales tax, I don't know what kind of fee that is. But that's what's been reported in the county weekly.
75 football fields worth of sand gone, and they've paid nothing for it, but they've made money off of it.
Well, they pay nothing to the city, and
Nothing
they
to
pay
the city.
something annually to the county.
To the county.
Does anybody know what their total yearly profit is?
So the question is.
What's their total yearly income?
Yeah, the question is, what's CEMEX total yearly income?
I will just say that this is their smallest operation of all their operations. That's what I've been told. So I don't know that number. Bruce may know.
So just with some calculations, an average bag of sand, or an average amount of sand, I forget how many, maybe it's a cubic meter, sells for approximately $48. But it ranges from 30 to 70, depending on the market. So if you just use the average unit sale price times 200,000 or 220,000, and you pay your workers, so that's a debit, but you don't pay for the resource, which is a big reason they make a pretty good profit. Anyway, it comes to somewhere a guesstimate of between $3 and $10 million a year. And so if you try to buy that land, and you might need to figure in many more years, and CEMEX has told me they would like to mine as is until 2040, when their current reclamation plan expires. And then they would have to reclaim the mine, restore the disturbed 105 acres, or get another reclamation plan, but they know that they would not get another reclamation plan approved. And so their give is that they're willing to go away in 2040, but they'd rather not have a ramp down where they mine less than they are now as they approach 2040.
I think I read that the permit possibility through the State Lands Commission will require a CEQA report, or CEQA NEPA, I don't know which. But is there any reason to support that idea, or just say deny the operation, close it down?
Okay, the question was, or the statement was that the State Lands Commission decision, it comes out of CEQA requirements. And that the requirement is you have an environmental impact report. So that's what it means. And that's
Well, my question is there value in supporting that, or just leave that out of the equation, just say close it down? Or should we say we want to?
No, they're limited by their actions. You know, I think they have to act in the manner that they chose, requiring a permit. I think that's the legal way they chose to go.
So if you think about the CalAm desal, that's an EIR EIS. And it's an EIS, Federal Environmental Impact Statement, because the Monterey Bay Sanctuary is a federal entity. So you can imagine that a permit that has impacts on both sides of the main high tide line. The beaches of our Monterey shore are part of the national monument, marine sanctuary. So there would likely be an EIR EIS, and the EIS is an environmental impact statement that's required by the National Environmental Policy Act, and the environmental impact report is a document that's required by the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA. So that's the State Lands Commission direction, and if you support protecting our dunes, it's good to support that. The Coastal Commission direction is different, and you should support that direction. And then the cities, our regional effort or direction is a little bit different, public nuisance, and there's reason to support that. And they work together, and we should not forget the workers in supporting CEMEX and supporting their workers, so that it's a win-win. It's not everybody wins except for the families who have their lives turned upside down.
How long does it take to get an EIR, and who does it?
EIR processes are usually, okay, the question is, what is the process of getting an EIR? They're normally done by consultants.
That are appointed by whom?
And they're hired by the company to do it. The company pays for them, but they're consultants that are supposed to do it in an unbiased way. And they can take considerable amount of time, 6 months.
Oh, way more than that.
Or
It's more like 18 months.
Well, it depends.
A big project.
How big the project is. So,
There's a question here?
I just looked up CEMEX while we were sitting here. Net sales in 2015 was about $14 billion worldwide. They had 1,600 ready-mix plants, 305 quarries, 56 cement plants where they make cement, not concrete. Net profit by one measure, EBITDA measure, was $2.6 billion for the year. That's how big it is worldwide.
they make a lot of money. And this is the smallest operation of their whole portfolio. I don't know why they're putting up such a big fuss.
Yeah, we have 3 different approaches, one by the city, one by the State Lands Commission, one by the Coastal Commission. So presumably the one that's coming up first is with the Coastal Commission, but probably people should also be addressing concerns to all 3 of those different levels. So is there an easy place for people to go to find the address of each of those and the specific ask for each of those different approaches?
So So the question was, there's 3 different approaches or tactics to this fight. One is Coastal Commission, which is coming up in July. We have State Lands Commission, who've already made a statement in May 16th, and then City of Marina, and also the other cities in the coast. Right, and it is confusing because each agency is using whatever jurisdiction they have at their disposal. Coastal Commission is the big one, and so that's why we keep ringing the Coastal Commission bell. We do not have it on our website currently, but I'll make sure tonight we update the SAND page on our website with who to contact, directly, how to contact each one of these agencies. State Lands Commission, we're in a state where, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ed, but they've made a statement, and I think you could definitely send a letter saying, thank you, Gavin Newsom 2018. I'm not, and you can extrapolate on this, but I don't know, when it's going to be on the agenda next for State Lands Commission or what the next step is. I'm imagining they're having conversations with CEMEX directly.
They've made a decision.
They made a decision,
Yeah.
and so.
Just like Marina made a decision.
Yes. And so that, I think that both of those entities have already made a decision, and now they're starting their internal processes of how do we move forward. State Lands Coastal Commission, on the other hand, is the big one coming up.
So is the City of Marina waiting for a response from CEMEX on your action? I mean, that's what State Lands is, waiting for CEMEX to respond and act.
So the City of Marina declared the public nuisance and directed the city attorney to research our legal options, since it's now a public nuisance. Now we have legal options, and we want a briefing on what those are, so we can decide what our next step is.
Any questions?
Just to underline this, when contacting, the importance of contacting the Coastal Commission, your feedback and comments are due by 5 o'clock on July 7th.
Letters in by.
Get your letters in by July 7th.
Snail mail or email?
You can do both snail mail and email, and they have contact information on the Coastal Commission website, but again, I'll make sure that the Surfrider website has those details as well.
So I'm looking at Kevin's notes, and it's Friday, July 7th at 5 p.m. close of business.
Yes.
Before we break here, leave, I just want to mention that you can stay in touch, get details about meetings, the July 6th City Council meeting in Seaside, and the July 3rd Coastal Commission meeting by signing one of the sheets out on the table.
13th.
Outside.
July 13th.
July 13th. What did I say? It's July 13th. So we don't have the time, the exact time, but you can have those details if you sign up on one of the sheets out on the wall.
Does anyone know an update on Sand City? I've heard that they're considering action, but I don't know. Does anyone know?
They already drafted a letter.
Do you want me to call their mayor?
Sand City it has also written a letter.
So they sent it.
They have sent it to the State Lands Commission. With its name like Sand City.
Hey, thank you, those were great questions, and thank all of our panelists.
Let me remind you that if you want a free t-shirt, please show up back there and you can get a free t-shirt.
Thanks,